So I had a dream last night, a very vivid dream, and yes, don't judge me for having such a vivid, detailed dream about the Chicago Bulls. Yes, I know it's sad that this team even consumes my moments in sleep, but in the dream, we were at the 2025 draft lottery. The Bulls leading up to the lottery were in the 9th position for the best odds to land in the top 4, meaning they had finished the regular season with the 9th worst record in the league. So there was the possibility that the Bulls could still lose their pick if two teams behind them jumped them in the lottery and fell to number 11, albeit a small chance, but it still could happen. But the Bulls fortunately did not get unlucky in my dream and fall out of the top 10 and lose their pick, but instead actually jumped into the top 4. I was losing my shit in the dream, and then when they revealed the top 4, again, so vivid, the Blazers got the number 4 pick, the Pistons got the number 3 pick, and it left the Bulls and the Spurs with the first 2 picks in the 2025 draft. And in my dream, I'm thinking, come on now, there is no way the Spurs are getting Cooper Flagg after getting Victor Wembanyama just 2 years ago. Like, come on now, don't do that to us. And just as they were about to reveal the number 2 pick, I feel a shaking on my shoulder. And initially it was in my dream where my kids were trying to get my attention. And then I quickly realized it was my wife waking me up to get the baby because she was crying. In that moment, I wanted to cry as well, knowing that this whole thing was all just a dream and the Bulls were this close to landing a franchise-changing player. But maybe this will become a reality, dreaming it into existence. I don't know, I feel like reality would be that the Bulls would have a pre-draft lottery position of 9 and then end up falling to number 11 and lose their pick. But anyway, the reason I likely had this dream was because we finally got the release of the NBA schedule yesterday. The full schedule release, which of course means we got to see how the Bulls games are going to shake out this season. And because the Bulls schedule is a little brutal, especially to start, it's probably why I had this dream where they were in a position to land the top pick in the 2025 draft. But either way, in this video, I'll be doing some quick reactions to the Bulls schedule, games I'm excited about, as well as some of the key stats of their schedule that have been shared thus far. And I would love to hear your guys' reaction to them as well. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, just some quick facts about the Bulls schedule. They have 13 back-to-back games this season, which is actually in line with league average. They have 9 games this season where they are at a rest disadvantage, meaning their opponent has more rest going into that game, and 13 rest game advantages where they will have more rest than their opponent. So both good things in terms of factoring in their strength of schedule. That said though, the Bulls have some weird road trips that don't really seem to make a lot of sense, where they have 3 big road trips in total, the longest being a 6-game trip in March. I feel like there are again some inefficiencies in how these trips were managed. Like, they're not going to play the Lakers and Clippers in the same trip yet again this season. They're not going to play the Warriors and Kings in the same trip. So multiple trips out to the West Coast. They have what I would consider to be the busiest month in November, with a total of 16 games, the most travel involved in those games. And then the Bulls schedule coming out of the gate is going to be pretty rough. So they open up the season on the road against the Pelicans on the 23rd. They then travel over to Milwaukee to take on the Bucks on the 25th, and then play their home opener in the second night of a back-to-back the following day after the Bucks on the 26th against the Thunder. Kind of harsh, the NBA, to put their home opener coming off a back-to-back, but whatever. And of course, they had to start their home opener against the Thunder, the same team they opened up the season against last time, but this time being much more meaningful in that we see Alex Caruso's return to the United Center, which I'm positive he's going to get a standing ovation when he first takes the floor. And then of course the revenge game for Josh Giddey after being traded away from the Thunder. You know Giddey is going to want to win that game and try and take over. They then follow that up by going up against the Grizzlies in Memphis on the 28th, and then come back home to play Orlando on the 30th. That's a lot of traveling in those first 7 days and going up against some tough opponents. So yes, there is a strong possibility that the Bulls start out the season 0-5. Yes, any team can lose on a given night. Anything can happen with potential injuries. Maybe the Bulls get hot and mess around and win a game or 2 in those first 5. But I would say it's more likely they start off the year 0-5. But I mean, even those 5 games aside, you go down the list through November and look at their first 20 games or so, and it's hard to point out games that the Bulls are going to for sure win. The Nets, they'll probably win that. Maybe they beat the Jazz, as they have historically played well against the Jazz, although we shouldn't go based off history because this is a new team that we're talking about for the Bulls. Maybe they beat the Hawks, then the Pistons. Like, those are a lot of tough above 500 playoff teams from last season, some of which got even better in those first 20 games. They play Boston 3 times before Christmas Day. They play the Cavs twice before November finishes out. And look, it's also hard to predict wins for some of these games because most are expecting the Bulls to not be that great. And so when you see them going up against a team that was already better than they were last year, and now they're playing a lesser Bulls team, you think, okay, that's probably a loss. Honestly though, and I'll have my predictions video out on the season after the preseason, but like really, I have no idea how to predict how this Bulls season is going to go. Because while everyone is saying, well, the Bulls are clearly going to be worse, they're losing their two best players in DeMar DeRozan and Alex Caruso. The Bulls won a good amount of their games in the clutch last season, and obviously DeMar is the king in the clutch. How are they going to defend without Alex Caruso? But at the same time, though, who knows if this means the Bulls are going to play a completely different style of basketball. They're probably going to play a lot faster, probably get up more threes, the ball is going to be moving a lot more, and maybe on a young team that is fast, agile, hungry, that could lead to some weird, better than expected results. Games on offense where the Bulls actually win more games than people anticipate, but they could also crash and burn and be severely undermatched and not be experienced enough to close out games. Who knows? This is honestly going to be one of the toughest seasons for me to predict. But anyway, some of the games I'm looking forward to most, obviously, when they come to the Bay Area to take on the Warriors. As you guys know, I live out here in the Bay Area and go see the Bulls every time they come to town. That will be on January 23rd. But then I'm also looking forward to the Bulls going to Sacramento this year, because I'm also going to head to that game to see DeMar DeRozan. I haven't gone to the game in Sac the past couple of seasons, but I've got to see DeMar play. It's also nice, I guess, that these are happening at separate times. Usually these games are back-to-back, and it makes it hard for me to go to both, but the game in Sac is going to be on the 20th of March. Then, of course, I'll be looking forward to the star-studded games, like when the Bulls play the Bucks in their second game of the season, but then also on November 20th for the first nationally televised game on ESPN. I always like seeing the Bulls take on the Knicks, even though the Knicks are probably going to beat up on the Bulls this year, but they'll see them at the Garden on November 13th, and then again at home on January 4th. The Nuggets come to town on January 27th. Always fun to see Jokic play. Let's hope he doesn't get ejected this time on a weak ejection call. LeBron and company come to town on March 27th, and then it's followed up by the Mavs coming to town, where we get to see Luka, Kyrie, and Klay Thompson on March 29th. Also, it's funny, the Bulls have a total of 5 nationally televised games, 2 being on ESPN, and the other 3 on NBA TV. 2 of their 5 games are against the Charlotte Hornets, 1 on ESPN, the other NBA TV. NBA is really hoping for a return to health of the Ball brothers to get some viewership for these games. Otherwise, I think there's a strong likelihood these games get flexed for other games, because these 2 games are otherwise bad national broadcasts for TV ratings if both of those guys are not able to play. The other games being against the Timberwolves on November 7th, which is on my birthday. Maybe somehow the Bulls can eke out a win on that day. They did beat the Wolves both times they faced off last season, to most people's surprise. Then they got the Bucks on the 20th of November on ESPN, the Grizzlies on the 23rd on NBA TV, and then, like I mentioned, the last nationally televised game being against the Hornets on January 17th, and then again on April 6th. Anyway, it's going to be interesting to see how this season plays out. Like I mentioned, I really don't know what to expect. Obviously, we know the Bulls aren't going to be contending. We know that. They're not going to be a good team, but it's possible they could mess around and somehow wind up in the same position they were in the standings last year, or they might just be really bad and actually wind up entering the tank for flag sweepstakes. We'll have to see how it all plays out. Still have a couple months away before the start of the regular season. Let me know your guys' thoughts and reactions to the Bulls schedule in the comments below. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.